We've had forensic evidence that's been of use 20 years on. So, I mean, it's a case of corruption more than it is a case of passage of time. And if the various sites, the various pieces of evidence have been played with, touched, tampered with, in any way corrupted, then obviously that creates big problems. Unfortunately, it's often the case that inadvertently, perhaps people finding potential evidence or coming across potential evidence will actually corrupt it themselves. But if that hasn't occurred, then often passage of time is of little significance, providing the evidence itself hasn't corroded. In many incidents, you can read a crime scene from blood splatter, from the layers of blood, what happened in between, how hard any degree of force was, the direction of that blood can implicate where someone was in a room, and what happened in that room to some degree, by the direction and the flow of actual small blood stains, in fact. In a holiday apartment, all sorts could be left. Hairs, traces of clothing perhaps, depending on how things happened. The odd item may have been left behind. If someone enters a room with something like a drink or what have you, and then tries to pick a child up, they abandon other things and may be struggling with the child. The child self may use bodily fluids more than an average adult, perhaps in vomit or something like that. So you have to sort of look at everything. You look at what you've got and try and make sense of any little facet that you have managed to identify, and put that into a kind of some kind of a plan of what has happened and who perhaps has been there. So everything from fingerprints to cuts to little specks of blood, etc., must be eliminated. But first, of course, they have to be found.
In 2007, a mysterious DNA sample was found in the apartment where Madeleine McCann vanished, but it was too complex to decode. Blood and saliva mixtures held key clues, yet the technology of the time failed. In 2025, no suspect, including Christian Bruckner, has been directly linked by DNA. Could modern advancements crack this mystery? Join us as we explore the DNA evidence, shocking scenarios, and the truth waiting to be uncovered in the most haunting case of the century.
Still not conclusive. When you have a DNA profile from an item or an area, a specific sample that matches the profile from another individual, you still do not have this conclusive level of evidence that is often talked about.
On May 3, 2007, a chilling event shook the quiet resort town of Praia da Luz, Portugal. 3-year-old Madeleine McCann vanished from her family's holiday apartment. This incident sparked one of the most high-profile missing person cases in modern history, captivating global attention for nearly 2 decades. The disappearance occurred while Madeleine's parents, Kate and Gerry McCann, were dining with friends at a tapas restaurant just 55 meters away. The family, hailing from Leicestershire, England, was on vacation, and the night seemed ordinary until Kate returned to the apartment at 10 p.m. to check on her children. Madeleine was gone, her bed empty, and the window in the room was slightly ajar. What followed was a frantic search, international media frenzy, and a complex investigation that remains unresolved to this day. The initial response was swift but chaotic. Local Portuguese police, known as the PJ, launched a search within hours, combing the resort and surrounding areas. The McCanns, devastated and desperate, appealed to the public for help. However, early missteps in the investigation, including delays in securing the crime scene and limited coordination with international authorities, drew criticism. Within days, the case escalated beyond Portugal's borders. British police, through Operation Grange, joined the effort, bringing forensic expertise and resources. The investigation grew to include private detectives, international tips, and even assistance from German authorities years later. Despite these efforts, no trace of Madeleine, alive or deceased, has been definitively found. Central to the case are Kate and Gerry McCann, both doctors, who faced intense scrutiny. The couple maintained they checked on their 3 children, Madeleine and her younger twin siblings, regularly during the evening. Their account, however, was questioned by some, particularly by Portuguese investigators who briefly considered them suspects in 2007. This theory, suggesting parental involvement in a cover-up or accident, was fueled by inconsistencies in timelines and the absence of immediate evidence pointing to an outsider. However, no concrete evidence ever substantiated these claims, and the McCanns were cleared of formal suspicion. Their resilience in campaigning for Madeleine's return through the Find Madeleine initiative has kept the case alive, though it has also attracted both sympathy and skepticism. Another key figure is Christian Bruckner, a German national identified as the prime suspect by German authorities in 2020. Bruckner, a convicted sex offender with a history of burglaries and assaults, lived in the Algarve region between 1995 and 2007, placing him near Praia da Luz at the time of the disappearance. German prosecutors claim to have concrete evidence that Madeleine is dead, though they have not disclosed specifics, and no DNA or forensic evidence directly links Bruckner to the case. His criminal background and proximity to the crime scene make him a focal point, but the lack of tangible evidence keeps his involvement speculative. The investigation has explored multiple theories. The most prominent is abduction by a stranger, potentially linked to a criminal network or opportunistic predator like Bruckner. Another theory posits an accident. Perhaps Madeleine wandered off or suffered a fatal mishap, followed by a cover-up. Some speculated about human trafficking, given the Algarve's history as a tourist hub with transient populations. Early in the case, Portuguese police leaned toward the possibility of parental involvement, a theory that strained relations with the McCanns and British authorities. Each hypothesis has been debated extensively, yet none has been proven due to the absence of definitive evidence. The global media played a pivotal role in shaping the case's narrative. From 2007 onward, Madeleine's face became iconic, plastered across newspapers, TV screens, and online platforms. The McCanns' decision to engage with the media, including interviews and public appeals, amplified awareness, but also invited criticism. Some accused them of exploiting the tragedy for attention, while others praised their determination. The media frenzy also spawned conspiracy theories, ranging from claims of a high-profile cover up to unfounded accusations against local residents. The intense coverage often overshadowed investigative progress, complicating efforts to separate fact from speculation. The scale of the investigation is staggering. Operation Grange, launched by British police in 2011, has cost over £13 million, with hundreds of leads pursued across Europe. Portuguese and German authorities have conducted their own searches, including a notable operation in June 2025 at the Arade Dam and other Algarve sites. Despite these efforts, no breakthrough has emerged. The case's complexity, spanning multiple jurisdictions, cultural differences, and an 18-year timeline, has made it a labyrinth for investigators. The lack of clear forensic evidence, particularly DNA, has been a persistent barrier, leaving the question of what happened to Madeleine McCann unanswered. This background sets the stage for a deeper dive into the DNA evidence, recent developments, and possible scenarios that could unlock the truth. The enduring mystery of Madeleine's fate continues to haunt her family, investigators, and millions worldwide, all hoping for closure in one of history's most perplexing cases. The investigation into Madeleine McCann's disappearance has leaned heavily on forensic science, particularly DNA analysis, as a potential key to unraveling the mystery. However, the DNA evidence collected in 2007 and analyzed over the years has proven frustratingly inconclusive, mired in complexity and limitations of early forensic technology. This section delves into the DNA samples collected, the methods used to analyze them, the challenges faced, and the potential for modern advancements to shed new light on the case. By examining the forensic details, we aim to understand why this critical evidence has yet to provide answers and what possibilities remain as of July 2025. In the immediate aftermath of Madeleine McCann's disappearance on May 3, 2007, forensic teams from Portugal and the United Kingdom scoured the McCann family's holiday apartment in Praia da Luz and, later, a rental car used by the family weeks after the incident. The goal was to identify any biological traces that could point to Madeleine's fate or the presence of a perpetrator. Several key samples were collected, primarily from the apartment and the vehicle, with the hope of finding a definitive clue. From the apartment, investigators gathered traces of blood and other biological material. specialized sniffer dogs, Eddie and Keela, trained to detect human remains and blood, were deployed by British authorities. These dogs identified potential evidence on the apartment's tiled floor, wall tiles, curtain fragments, and behind a sofa. A particularly intriguing find was a sample described as a mysterious saliva sample on a surface within the apartment. Additionally, when the McCann's rental car, a Renault Scenic hired 25 days after Madeleine's disappearance, was examined, the dogs alerted to traces in the trunk, including what appeared to be blood and other biological material. The FSS in the United Kingdom was tasked with analyzing these samples. In total, 18 pieces of evidence were submitted for DNA testing, using a technique known as low copy number LCN DNA analysis. LCN is a highly sensitive method designed to amplify minute quantities of DNA, making it useful for cases with degraded or limited samples. However, LCN is notoriously susceptible to contamination and cross-transfer, especially in environments like a holiday apartment frequented by multiple guests. This sensitivity became a significant hurdle in the Madeleine McCann case. The results of the 2007 DNA analysis were, to put it bluntly, a forensic dead end. Of the 18 samples analyzed, 8 were deemed too complex to interpret meaningfully, and 6 contained too little DNA to yield reliable results. The complexity arose because many samples were mixed profiles, meaning they contained DNA from multiple individuals. In a shared space like the apartment, this was not surprising. Guests, cleaners, and the McCann family themselves could have contributed to the genetic material present. One sample from the car trunk drew significant attention. It showed 15 out of 19 genetic markers, matching Madeleine's DNA profile, a result that initially sparked speculation. However, the FSS report, authored by Dr. John Lowe, emphasized that this sample was a mixture from at least 3 individuals, making it impossible to conclude definitively that Madeleine's DNA was present. The partial match could have been coincidental, as common genetic markers can appear in unrelated individuals. Dr. Lowe noted that the results were too complex to interpret meaningfully, and the question of whether the DNA belonged to Madeleine remained unanswered. This ambiguity fueled media speculation and public debate, but offered no concrete answers. The mysterious saliva sample from the apartment was another point of intrigue. Portuguese forensic teams attempted to extract a DNA profile from it, but the sample was too small and degraded to yield a usable profile. This failure was a significant setback, as the saliva could have belonged to Madeleine, a family member, or a potential suspect. In 2020, German investigators expressed interest in retesting this sample, believing it could be a critical piece of evidence. However, as of July 2025, there is no public record indicating whether this retesting occurred or what results, if any, it produced. The reliance on LCN DNA analysis in 2007 highlights the limitations of forensic technology at the time. While LCN was cutting edge for its era, its sensitivity to contamination made it unreliable in cases with mixed or degraded samples. The holiday apartment, used by multiple families before and after the McCanns, was far from a sterile environment. Cleaning staff, previous guests, and even investigators could have inadvertently introduced extraneous DNA. Similarly, the rental car, used weeks after the disappearance, was handled by multiple people, further complicating the analysis. Another issue was the interpretation of mixed DNA profiles. Unlike a single, source sample, which can be directly matched to an individual, mixed profiles require statistical analysis to determine the likelihood of a specific person's contribution. In 2007, the tools to disentangle these mixtures were rudimentary. The FSS's inability to provide clear answers led to frustration among investigators and fueled skepticism among the public, some of whom questioned whether the evidence was mishandled or deliberately obscured. Christian Bruckner, identified as the prime suspect by German authorities in 2020, has been a focal point of the investigation in recent years. Bruckner lived in the Algarve region between 1995 and 2007, placing him in proximity to Praia da Luz at the time of Madeleine's disappearance. His criminal history, including burglaries and sexual offenses, made him a compelling suspect. However, as of July 2025, No DNA evidence directly links him to the crime scene, the McCann's apartment, or the rental car. German prosecutors have claimed to possess concrete evidence that Madleen is deceased, but they have not disclosed whether this evidence includes DNA. The absence of forensic confirmation suggests their case may rely on circumstantial evidence, such as witness statements or Brueckner's behavioral patterns. The lack of a DNA connection remains a significant gap, as a definitive match could solidify the case against him. Without it, Brueckner's status as the prime suspect remains speculative, despite his troubling criminal background. In 2019, an American company, Cybergenetics, offered a potential lifeline for the investigation. Their proprietary technology, TrueAllele, is designed to analyze complex DNA mixtures with greater precision than traditional methods. TrueAllele uses probabilistic genotyping, a computational approach that can separate individual contributors in a mixed sample and calculate the statistical likelihood of a match. Cybergenetics proposed reanalyzing all 18 DNA samples from the McCann case at no cost, asserting that their technology could resolve ambiguities that stumped the FSS in 2007. The offer was sent to both the British police and the Portuguese PJ. However, there is no record of either agency accepting the proposal. By July 2025, no updates have emerged regarding TrueAllele's application to the case. This missed opportunity is puzzling, given the technology's proven success in other complex cases. For example, TrueAllele has been used to solve cold cases in the United States by clarifying mixed DNA profiles that were previously deemed uninterpretable. The reluctance to pursue this avenue may stem from bureaucratic inertia, jurisdictional disputes, or concerns about the cost and feasibility of revisiting old evidence. Advancements in DNA analysis since 2007 offer hope for future breakthroughs. Techniques like NGS and improved probabilistic genotyping could potentially unlock the secrets hidden in the McCann case samples. NGS allows for more detailed profiling of degraded or low-quality DNA, while probabilistic genotyping, as used in TrueAllele, can disentangle mixed profiles with unprecedented accuracy. These tools could re-examine the blood, saliva, and other samples to either confirm or rule out Madeleen's presence and identify potential suspects. Moreover, forensic databases have expanded significantly since 2007. International cooperation through organizations like Interpol could allow cross-referencing of DNA profiles against missing persons or criminal databases. If the saliva sample or other traces belong to an unknown individual, modern databases might provide a match that was unavailable 18 years ago. However, implementing these technologies requires coordination between British, Portuguese, and German authorities, as well as funding and political will, resources that have been strained by the case's long duration. The inconclusive DNA results have shaped public perception of the Madeleine McCann case. Early media reports of a partial match in the car trunk fueled speculation about the McCann's involvement, despite the lack of definitive evidence. The mysterious saliva sample, often sensationalized as a potential smoking gun, has kept conspiracy theories alive. The absence of a clear forensic link to Brueckner or any other suspect has allowed skepticism and alternative narratives to flourish, from claims of a cover up to theories about human trafficking networks. The DNA evidence, or lack thereof, underscores the broader challenges of the case. Without a body, a confession, or a definitive forensic match, investigators are left with fragments of a puzzle that refuse to fit together. The complexity of the 2007 samples and the limitations of early analysis techniques have left a void that modern technology could potentially fill, but only if authorities act on the opportunities available. As of July 2025, the DNA evidence in the Madeleine McCann case remains a tantalizing but elusive piece of the puzzle. The samples collected in 2007 hold potential clues, but their complexity and the limitations of past analysis have prevented breakthroughs. The saliva sample, in particular, remains a point of intrigue, as does the possibility of retesting with advanced tools like TrueAllele. The absence of a DNA link to Christian Brueckner keeps his role in the case uncertain, while the broader forensic picture highlights the challenges of solving a case in a transient, heavily trafficked environment like a holiday resort. The next section will explore recent developments, including searches in 2025 and the controversial prospect of Brewekner's release, to understand how they intersect with the ongoing quest for answers. In the evolving world of forensic science, DNA analysis stands at the forefront of solving complex cases that once seemed impossible to crack. Over the last 2 decades, revolutionary advances have redefined the boundaries of what DNA can reveal, offering new hope for cold cases like the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. Despite the limitations of forensic technology in 2007, modern tools such as probabilistic genotyping and NGS now hold the potential to unlock answers that once seemed forever out of reach. Among the most promising technologies is TrueAllele, developed by the American company Cybergenetics. Unlike traditional DNA analysis, which struggles with mixed or degraded samples, TrueAllele employs a method known as probabilistic genotyping. This approach uses sophisticated computer algorithms to separate individual DNA contributors from complex mixtures, something that was considered nearly impossible in 2007. TrueAllele works by analyzing the probability that certain DNA sequences belong to specific individuals, calculating statistical likelihoods that can definitively match or exclude suspects with far greater confidence. TrueAllele has already been instrumental in resolving high-profile cases worldwide. In the United States, it has been used to solve numerous cold cases, including decades-old homicides where the original DNA evidence had been deemed too complex or degraded for traditional analysis. One notable example is the 1991 murder of Jennifer Brinkman in Washington state, where TrueAllele helped identify a suspect after years of dead ends. The system has also been validated in multiple courtrooms and is widely considered a forensic game changer in cases involving mixed DNA profiles, such as those found on clothing, weapons, or crime scenes with multiple individuals. Similarly, the NGS represents another monumental leap in forensic science. Traditional DNA analysis relies on a limited number of genetic markers, typically 13 to 20, but NGS can sequence entire genomes or targeted regions, providing exponentially more data. This allows forensic scientists to extract usable profiles from highly degraded or low-quantity samples, such as bone fragments, old bloodstains, or trace biological materials invisible to the naked eye. NGS has proven its value in solving international cases. In Canada, it was used to identify a victim from the 1974 Babes in the Woods case, where 2 young boys were found murdered in Stanley Park, Vancouver. In Australia, NGS helped solve the mysterious case of the Somerton Man, an unidentified body discovered in 1948, revealing his identity after more than 70 years. Both cases were once thought unsolvable due to the degraded nature of the DNA, but modern sequencing provided answers that had eluded investigators for decades. The relevance of these technologies to the Madeleine McCann case cannot be overstated. In 2007, the forensic techniques applied to the biological evidence, particularly the LCN DNA analysis used by the UK's Forensic Science Service, were state-of-the-art for the time. However, LCN DNA is notoriously prone to contamination and cannot reliably interpret complex mixtures. This was the core problem with the McCann evidence, which included mixed DNA profiles from the family's apartment and rental car, along with a degraded saliva sample. The forensic reports from 2007 deemed many of these samples too complex or too small to yield conclusive results. TrueAllele, NGS, and similar technologies were simply not available then. However, they are now widely accessible and have been validated in criminal courts globally. In fact, Cybergenetics publicly offered in 2019 to reanalyze all 18 DNA samples from the McCann investigation, stating that their technology could likely resolve the ambiguities that stymied investigators in 2007. Their offer included conducting the analysis at no cost to British and Portuguese authorities. Despite this, neither Scotland Yard nor the Polícia Judiciária accepted the offer, and as of July 2025, no public record exists showing these samples have been retested using modern techniques. The reasons for this inaction remain unclear. Some speculate that bureaucratic inertia, legal restrictions on evidence handling, or political sensitivities may be blocking the use of advanced DNA analysis in the case. Others suggest that authorities may be reluctant to revisit forensic evidence that has already fueled so much public controversy, particularly given the scrutiny surrounding the McCanns and the suspicion once cast upon them. However, from a scientific and investigative standpoint, there is little justification for ignoring such promising technology in a case with so much at stake. The process for retesting would be straightforward in principle, though complex in execution. First, the original DNA samples must be retrieved from storage, assuming they were properly preserved. Then, under strict chain of custody protocols, they would be submitted to an accredited laboratory specializing in probabilistic genotyping, or NGS. The lab would analyze the samples to generate new DNA profiles, potentially identifying contributors who were previously masked by mixed profiles. In the case of the saliva sample, or the material from the car trunk, these methods could either confirm Madeleine's presence or definitively rule it out. Additionally, they might identify unknown individuals who left traces at the scene, an avenue that could lead to new suspects or previously overlooked connections. Importantly, this process would also provide a level of statistical certainty far beyond what was possible in 2007, whereas earlier DNA reports included phrases like, "too complex to interpret." Modern tools produce quantifiable probabilities that courts can accept as reliable evidence. For example, a match produced by TrueAllele might state, there is a 99.9999% probability that a particular individual contributed to the sample. Such clarity could fundamentally change the legal and investigative landscape of the case. The case of Madeleine McCann remains uniquely suited for the application of these cutting-edge forensic tools. The original evidence, though complex and degraded, still exists. The case remains officially open in multiple jurisdictions, meaning that legal pathways for re-examination are available, if political will exists. Moreover, the global profile of the case could serve as a catalyst for pushing forensic science to its limits, potentially setting a precedent for how future cold cases are handled. In a case defined by uncertainty, the DNA samples from 2007 represent one of the last remaining forensic avenues that could unlock the truth. Modern technology has shattered the barriers that once constrained forensic investigations. Whether the authorities choose to embrace these tools remains to be seen. But if they do, they may finally bring closure to one of the world's most haunting mysteries. The investigation into Madeleine McCann's disappearance has seen renewed activity in 2025, with fresh searches, ongoing scrutiny of the prime suspect, Christian Bruckner, and persistent public interest fueled by claims like those of Julia Wandelt. Despite these efforts, the case remains unresolved, with no significant forensic breakthroughs, particularly in DNA evidence. This section explores the latest developments, including the June 2025 searches in Portugal, Bruckner's looming release from prison, and the controversy surrounding individuals claiming to be Madleen. These updates, drawn from credible sources and the provided documents, highlight the ongoing challenges and the faint hope for closure in this enduring mystery. In early June 2025, a significant operation unfolded in the Algarve region of Portugal, reigniting attention on the Madeleine McCann case. From June 3 to June 5, German and Portuguese police conducted a 3-day search across 21 plots of scrubland and abandoned buildings near Atalaya, Lagos, approximately 1 mile from Praia da Luz, where Madeleine vanished in 2007. The search, initiated at the request of German authorities, specifically the Braunschweig Public Prosecutor's Office and the German Federal Criminal Police Office, BKA, focused on areas linked to Christian Bruckner, who resided in a cottage nearby at the time of the disappearance. The operation involved heavy machinery, including JCB diggers and ground-penetrating radar, as well as divers and firefighters who drained wells and calmed dense vegetation with pitchforks, pickaxes, and shovels. The search aimed to uncover forensic evidence that could either implicate Bruckner or provide clues about Madeleine's fate. Notably, 2 guns were discovered during the operation, one of which was similar in size to a firearm Bruckner was known to carry. However, Initial reports indicated that these weapons did not yield significant forensic evidence connecting them to Madelein's case. Local media reported that some material, including animal bones, was collected and sent for analysis, but a conversation between a reporter and an officer suggested that nothing of major significance was found. The search concluded on June 5, with German investigators leaving the site by 5:15 p.m. local time, followed by Portuguese police removing the outer cordon. The lack of immediate results dampened hopes, with outlets noting that this operation might be the last major search, given the case's 18-year duration and the exhaustion of viable leads. This search was not the first in the region. In May 2023, a similar operation took place near the Arade Dam, about 31 miles from Praia da Luz, prompted by German prosecutor Hans Christian Wolters. That search, also supported by the BKA, was based on cell phone geolocation data, placing Bruckner's phone near the McCann apartment within 5 minutes of Madelein's disappearance. A child's sock found in the area in 2008 had raised hopes, but the 2023 search yielded no significant findings. The 2025 operation, while more targeted, similarly failed to produce a breakthrough, reinforcing the challenges of finding actionable evidence after nearly 2 decades. Christian Bruckner, named the prime suspect in 2020, remains a central figure in the investigation. A 48-year-old German national with a history of burglaries, sexual assaults, and child abuse, Bruckner lived in the Algarve from 1995 to 2007, including in Praia da Luz at the time of Madelein's disappearance. He is currently serving a 7-year sentence in Germany for the 2005 rape of a 72-year-old American woman in Praia da Luz, a crime eerily close to the McCann case's location. However, as of July 2025, Bruckner has not been charged in connection with Madelein's disappearance, and no DNA evidence directly links him to the crime scene or the McCann's rental car. A significant development in 2025 has been the controversy surrounding Bruckner's potential release from prison. He is scheduled to be freed in September 2025, but his release could occur earlier if an outstanding fine is paid. Reports emerged in June 2025 that an anonymous donor had settled this fine, raising fears among investigators and the public that Bruckner might flee to a country without an extradition treaty with Germany. This possibility is particularly alarming given his status as the prime suspect and the German prosecutors' assertion that they have concrete evidence of Madelein's death, though they have not disclosed specifics. The lack of transparency about this evidence, combined with the absence of forensic confirmation, has fueled skepticism about the strength of the case against him. In October 2024, Bruckner was acquitted of unrelated sexual offense charges in Braunschweig, Germany, involving alleged rapes and child abuse in Portugal between 2000 and 2017. This acquittal dealt a blow to prosecutors, who had hoped a conviction would keep him incarcerated longer, allowing more time to build a case in the McCann investigation. Bruckner's defense team argued that his prosecution in these cases was influenced by his association with the McCann case, a claim that underscores the public and legal pressure surrounding him. A chilling letter reportedly written by Bruckner from prison saw him taunting police, claiming they lack evidence to connect him to Madelein's disappearance. He wrote, "Is there a body?" A statement that has intensified public outrage and speculation. Another notable development in 2025 involves Julia Wandelt, a Polish woman who has repeatedly claimed to be Madeleine McCann. In February 2025, Wandelt announced new DNA test results, suggesting a possible link to Jerry McCann, Madeleine's father. These claims, however, were swiftly debunked by experts and authorities. Previous DNA tests in 2023 confirmed Feast of the Passover confirmed Wandelt's heritage as Polish, Lithuanian, and Romanian, with no connection to the McCann family. The 2025 tests, conducted independently and not verified by reputable agencies like Scotland Yard or Interpol, were dismissed as unreliable. Experts cited in Metro UK emphasized that Wandelt's claims lacked scientific credibility, and the McCanns refused to participate in her proposed DNA comparisons, likely due to skepticism and emotional strain. Wandelt's persistence has stirred controversy, with some accusing her of exploiting the case for attention. In 2025, She faced legal repercussions, being charged with 4 counts of stalking involving Kate, Jerry, and their children. Her actions have highlighted the case's ongoing public fascination, with social media amplifying unfounded theories. The Wandelt saga underscores the challenge of separating legitimate leads from sensationalized claims in a case that attracts global attention. The 2025 developments have kept the Madeleine McCann case in the spotlight, but they have also deepened the sense of stagnation. Praia da Luz residents feel wary of the media attention, with some describing the case as a source of ghoulish obsession among true crime tourists. The lack of significant findings in the June searches, combined with Bruckner's potential release, has led to fading optimism. The McCanns, through their Find Madeleine campaign, expressed unwavering determination on the 18th anniversary of her disappearance in May 2025, but they refrained from commenting during the active search, focusing on supporting the police efforts. The media's role remains double-edged. Outlets have provided detailed updates, but sensationalized coverage, such as Wandelt's claims, often overshadows substantive progress. The case's high profile, costing over £13.2 million for Operation Grange as of 2024, continues to draw scrutiny over resource allocation, with the Home Office approving an additional £108,000 for 2025-26 to sustain a small team of investigators. The 2025 searches and Bruckner's looming release highlight the ongoing hurdles in the case. The absence of new DNA evidence or forensic breakthroughs from the June operation underscores the difficulty of finding clues after 18 years. The guns found, while intriguing, lacked a direct link to Madeleine, and the animal bones discovered were irrelevant. Bruckner's acquittal and potential early release raise concerns about justice slipping away, especially if he flees. Meanwhile, Wandelt's debunked claims reflect the case's vulnerability to misinformation, complicating the search for truth. These developments reveal a case stuck in limbo, driven by hope but hampered by time, faded evidence, and jurisdictional complexities. The next sections will explore the broader theories, controversies, and potential DNA scenarios, shedding light on whether modern forensic advancements or public pressure might yet unlock the mystery of Madeleine McCann's disappearance. The possibility that someone claiming to be Madeleine McCann could have their DNA match her profile is a dramatic scenario that would fundamentally alter the course of this nearly 2-decade-long mystery. If such a match were confirmed, it would be a seismic breakthrough in the case. A confirmed DNA match with someone claiming to be Madeleine McCann would be a historic turning point. DNA evidence, often referred to as the gold standard in forensic science, could definitively establish the claimant's identity as the missing girl. The McCanns have access to Madeleine's DNA profile, derived from personal items like her hairbrush or clothing, as well as familial DNA from Kate, Jerry, and their twins. If a claimant's DNA matched this profile, verified by a reputable laboratory using techniques like short tandem repeat (STR) analysis, the case would shift from a missing person investigation to a complex inquiry into what happened to Madeleine after 2007. The immediate consequence would be the confirmation of Madeleine's survival, at least until the time of the DNA test. This would overturn the German prosecutor's 2020 assertion, based on undisclosed, concrete evidence, that Madeleine is deceased. Investigators, including British police, Portuguese Polícia Judiciária, and German authorities, would launch a new phase of inquiry to trace Madeleine's journey. Key questions would include: where has she been since 2007? Was she abducted and raised by another family, or was she part of a trafficking network? Who was responsible for her disappearance, and how did she remain undetected for 18 years? This investigation would likely involve interviewing the claimant, tracking her movements, and identifying any individuals or networks involved in her life post-disappearance. The legal implications would be profound. If evidence pointed to an abduction, authorities would prioritize identifying and prosecuting the perpetrators. Christian Bruckner, the prime suspect since 2020, would face renewed scrutiny, though the absence of DNA linking him to the original crime scene complicates his prosecution. If the claimant's story suggested human trafficking or other criminal activity, international agencies like Interpol could become involved, potentially uncovering broader networks. The case would also prompt a review of the original investigation, examining why Madleen was not found earlier and whether missed opportunities, such as the failure to pursue advanced DNA analysis, delayed this outcome. For Kate and Jerry McCann, a DNA match confirming Madelein's identity would be a moment of unimaginable relief mixed with complex emotions. After nearly 2 decades of uncertainty, grief, and public scrutiny, the discovery that their daughter is alive would offer hope and vindication for their relentless Find Madleen campaign. However, it would also raise challenging questions about Madelein's life and identity. The claimant, now in her early 20s, might have fragmented or no memories of her early childhood due to trauma, upbringing, or psychological manipulation. Her recollection of events could differ significantly from the McCanns' expectations, complicating emotional reconnection. Reintegration would be a delicate process. The McCanns would face the task of rebuilding a relationship with a daughter who has lived a separate life for 18 years. Psychological support would be essential, as Madleen might struggle with identity conflicts or loyalty to those who raised her, especially if they were unaware of her true origins. The twins, Amelie and Sean, who were infants at the time of the disappearance, would also navigate the surreal experience of meeting a sister they barely knew. Publicly, the McCanns would face intense media attention, with their every move scrutinized, potentially amplifying their emotional burden. Verifying a DNA match presents significant challenges. The process would require rigorous testing by an independent, accredited laboratory to avoid errors or accusations of fraud. The original DNA samples from 2007, such as those from the apartment or rental car, are complex mixtures, often degraded or contaminated, making them unreliable for comparison. Instead, investigators would rely on Madelein's reference DNA or familial profiles. Any discrepancy in the testing process, such as mishandling samples or using outdated methods, could undermine the result's credibility. Media pressure would be another hurdle. A confirmed match would spark a global frenzy, with journalists, true crime enthusiasts, and social media amplifying speculation. The McCanns have faced relentless scrutiny since 2007, and a new development could reignite conspiracy theories or criticism, particularly from those who questioned their innocence. Managing this attention while protecting the claimant's privacy and mental health would be critical. Reintegration poses its own difficulties. The claimant might have been raised in a different cultural or linguistic environment, potentially with no knowledge of her British origins. Psychological trauma from an abduction or years of separation could hinder her ability to reconnect with the McCanns. Additionally, legal questions about her current identity, such as citizenship, name, or guardianship, could complicate matters, especially if she was adopted or raised under false pretenses. The likelihood of this scenario occurring is considered very low, primarily due to historical precedents. In 2023 and 2025, Julia Wandelt, a Polish woman, claimed to be Madeleine McCann, citing physical resemblances and vague memories. Her DNA tests, however, confirmed her Polish, Lithuanian, and Romanian heritage, with no connection to the McCann family. These tests were conducted independently, and their lack of verification by authorities like Scotland Yard diminished their credibility. Wandelt's case, which led to stalking charges against her, highlights the pattern of unfounded claims in this high-profile case. Other individuals have made similar assertions over the years, but none have been substantiated through DNA. The absence of credible claimants, combined with the German investigators' belief that Madleen is deceased, reduces the probability of a living Madleen emerging. The 2007 DNA evidence, while inconclusive, does not support the idea of her survival, and the passage of 18 years makes a sudden, verified claim statistically unlikely. A DNA match with someone claiming to be Madeleine McCann would be a monumental breakthrough, offering hope to her family and reigniting the investigation. It would trigger a complex process of verifying identity, tracing her journey since 2007, and navigating emotional and legal challenges. However, the case of Julia Wandelt and others underscores the rarity of such an outcome. The lack of supporting evidence and the complexities of the original DNA samples make this scenario a long shot, yet it remains a powerful what if in a case defined by unanswered questions. The next sections will explore other DNA scenarios, continuing to unravel the possibilities in this enduring mystery. In the enduring mystery of Madeleine McCann's disappearance, numerous individuals have come forward over the years claiming to be the missing British girl who vanished from Praia da Luz, Portugal, on May 3, 2007. If the DNA of such a claimant fails to match Madeleine's profile or that of her family, it represents a scenario that, while disappointing, is far more likely based on historical precedents. If a claimant's DNA does not match Madeleine McCann's profile, the immediate consequence is the dismissal of their claim. This outcome would confirm that the individual is not Madeleine, effectively closing that avenue of investigation. Such a result aligns with the experience of Julia Wandelt. From a legal and investigative perspective, a non-matching DNA result shifts focus away from the claimant and back to existing leads, such as the prime suspect, Christian Bruckner. The investigation, led by British, Portuguese, and German authorities, would continue to explore Bruckner's potential involvement, despite the absence of DNA evidence linking him to the crime scene. This scenario does not advance the case, but reinforces the status quo, where investigators grapple with inconclusive evidence from 2007, including complex DNA mixtures from the McCann's apartment and rental car. The lack of progress would likely frustrate authorities and the public, who have invested significant resources, over £13 million for Operation Grange alone, into the case. The individual claiming to be Madeleine would face significant personal repercussions if their DNA does not match. Public reaction, amplified by media scrutiny, can be harsh, as seen with Julia Wandelt. After her claims were disproven, Wandelt faced accusations of seeking attention or exploiting the McCann family's tragedy. In 2025, she was charged with 4 counts of stalking involving Kate, Jerry, and their children, as reported by the Daily Record. Such criticism can lead to profound emotional and psychological damage, particularly if the claimant genuinely believes their story due to psychological issues, trauma, or misinformation. The claimant might also face social ostracism or online harassment, as the McCann case attracts intense public interest. Wandelt's experience illustrates this. Her social media posts, claiming physical resemblances to Madeleine or vague memories, were met with skepticism and ridicule, further isolating her. The McCanns, wary of false claims after years of similar incidents, have been reluctant to engage with such individuals, as seen in their refusal to participate in Wandelt's proposed DNA tests. This lack of engagement can deepen the claimant's sense of rejection, compounding their emotional distress. A non-matching DNA result would redirect investigative efforts to other leads, primarily Bruckner, who remains the prime suspect despite no forensic link to Madeleine's disappearance. German prosecutors' assertion of concrete evidence that Madeleine is deceased, possibly based on witness statements rather than DNA, would continue to guide their case. However, the absence of new evidence from the claimant would mean no immediate progress, leaving investigators to rely on re-examining old evidence or pursuing circumstantial leads, such as Bruckner's phone records or his history in the Algarve. The challenge lies in the case's stagnation. The 2007 DNA samples, including blood and a saliva trace from the apartment, were too complex or degraded to yield clear results, even with advanced techniques like LCN analysis. Proposals to retest these samples using modern tools, such as cybergenetics TrueAllele, have not been acted upon, as noted in the provided documents. This inertia, combined with Bruckner's potential release in September 2025, heightens the urgency to find new leads, yet a non-matching DNA result offers no such opportunity. This situation is highly probable, as history shows multiple individuals claiming to be Madeleine, none of whom have been verified. Julia Wandelt's case is a prime example. Her 2023 DNA tests confirm no relation to the McCanns, and her 2025 claims were dismissed as unverified by experts, as reported by Metro UK. Other claimants over the years have similarly failed to provide credible evidence, reinforcing the pattern. The high public profile of the case, amplified by media and social platforms, encourages such claims, often driven by attention-seeking or psychological factors rather than factual basis. The German investigators' belief in Madeleine's death further reduces the likelihood of a living claimant, making a non-matching DNA result the expected outcome. The discovery of human remains in the vicinity of Praia da Luz, Portugal, would be a significant development in this enduring mystery. However, if DNA analysis reveals that the bones do not belong to Madeleine, a new and potentially unrelated investigation could emerge, diverting resources and attention from the McCann case. This scenario explores the implications of such a finding, including the opening of a new case, the potential for indirect clues, the challenges of identifying the remains, and why this outcome remains unlikely as of July 2025, given the absence of reported human remains linked to the case. If bones are discovered in the Algarve region, perhaps during searches like those conducted in June 2025 near Atalaya or the Arade Dam, and DNA testing confirms they are not Madeleine's, a new investigation would likely be initiated. The primary task would be to identify the remains through forensic analysis, comparing their DNA profile to international missing persons databases, such as those managed by Interpol or national agencies like the UK's Missing Persons Unit. This process could uncover a previously unknown case of a missing person, a homicide, or an unreported accident, potentially shedding light on criminal activity in the region. The discovery could have indirect relevance to the McCann case. If the remains are found in an area associated with Christian Bruckner, the prime suspect since 2020, they might suggest a broader pattern of criminal behavior in the Algarve. Bruckner's history of burglaries and sexual offenses makes this a plausible, though speculative, connection. For instance, evidence linking the remains to Bruckner, such as proximity to his former residence or matching items like the guns found in 2025, could strengthen suspicions about his involvement in Madeleine's disappearance, even without direct forensic ties. Conversely, the new case could complicate the McCann investigation by diverting resources and focus, as authorities juggle multiple inquiries in a region already strained by the high-profile case. Legally, the identification of the remains would trigger a separate investigation, potentially involving Portuguese, German, and international authorities, depending on the victim's origin. If the remains indicate foul play, such as signs of trauma, a homicide case could emerge, requiring forensic examination and witness interviews. The case might also prompt renewed scrutiny of unsolved disappearances in the Algarve, a popular tourist destination with a transient population, raising questions about systemic issues like human trafficking or serial crime. The opening of a new case would have significant investigative and social ramifications. Authorities would need to allocate resources to identify the remains, a process that could take months or years if the DNA does not match existing database profiles. This resource strain could frustrate McCann supporters, who have long demanded focus on Madeleine's case. Socially, the discovery could amplify public interest in missing persons cases across Europe. The Algarve's history as a tourist hub, coupled with the McCann case's global profile, might lead to campaigns for better tracking of disappearances, as seen in the Find Madleen initiative. However, it could also fuel speculation and conspiracy theories, particularly if the remains are found near Praia da Luz. Media outlets have noted local residents' frustration with true crime tourism, and a new case could exacerbate this, drawing more attention to the region. Identifying the remains poses significant challenges. Modern forensic techniques, such as NGS or mitochondrial DNA analysis, can generate detailed profiles from degraded samples, but success depends on matching the DNA to a known individual. If the remains belong to someone not in a database, such as an undocumented migrant or a victim from decades past, identification could be nearly impossible. The provided documents note that the 2007 McCann DNA samples were complex and degraded, highlighting the difficulty of working with old or contaminated evidence. Similar issues could arise with newly discovered bones. Resource limitations are another hurdle. The McCann investigation has been resource-intensive, and a new case would compete for forensic expertise, funding, and police manpower. Portuguese authorities, criticized for early missteps in 2007, might struggle to coordinate with international partners, as seen in past jurisdictional tensions. The German investigation into Bruckner, already strained by his acquittal on unrelated charges in 2024, could be further complicated if resources are diverted to a new case. This scenario is considered unlikely due to the absence of reported human remains in recent searches. The June 2025 operation near Atalaya found only animal bones, and earlier searches, like the 2023 Arade Dam effort, yielded no human remains. The lack of such discoveries over 18 years suggests that finding bones, let alone ones unrelated to Madleen, is a low-probability event. The Algarve's rugged terrain and heavy tourist traffic make it challenging to uncover old remains, and the focus on Bruckner has not produced physical evidence like bones linked to any case. If bones found in the Algarve are proven not to be Madeleen's, a new investigation would emerge, potentially uncovering an unknown victim and complicating the McCann case. While it could offer indirect clues about regional crime, the challenges of identifying remains and managing resources are significant. The low likelihood of this scenario, given no recent reports of human remains, keeps the focus on existing leads like Bruckner, as the search for Madeleen's fate continues. The disappearance of Madeleine McCann has left an indelible mark on her parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, and their twin children, Sean and Emily. Nearly 2 decades of uncertainty, grief, and public scrutiny have tested their resilience. Yet they have channeled their pain into advocacy, keeping Madeleen's case alive through the Find Madleen campaign. The emotional impact on Kate and Jerry McCann is profound. Losing their 3-year-old daughter plunged them into a nightmare of grief, compounded by the absence of closure. Kate, a former physician, has spoken openly about the guilt of leaving their children alone that night, a decision that invited public criticism. In their 2025 statement on the Find Madleen website, marking the 18th anniversary of the disappearance, the McCanns described their enduring pain, but also their determination to never give up hope. The twins, now young adults, have grown up under the shadow of their sister's absence, navigating a childhood shaped by media attention and their parents' relentless search. The family's emotional resilience is evident, yet the lack of answers continues to weigh heavily. The Find Madleen campaign, launched shortly after the disappearance, has been a cornerstone of the McCanns' efforts. Funded by public donations, book proceeds from Kate's memoir Madleen, and high-profile support, the campaign finances private investigations and maintains a global presence through its website and social media. It aims to keep Madeleen's face recognizable, encouraging tips that might lead to her whereabouts. Beyond their daughter's case, the McCanns have advocated for broader awareness of missing children, supporting initiatives like the UK's Missing People charity. Their work has spotlighted systemic issues, such as the need for better international coordination in missing persons cases, as seen in the jurisdictional challenges between British, Portuguese, and German authorities. The McCanns' relationship with the media and public is a double-edged sword. Their decision to engage with press, through interviews and appeals, amplified awareness but invited scrutiny. Early Portuguese media leaks and police suspicions in 2007, labeling them as orguidos, fueled accusations of negligence or involvement, despite their clearance. While many admire their perseverance, others criticize their media strategy as self-serving. Social media has amplified both support and conspiracy theories, with figures like Julia Wandelt, who falsely claimed to be Madleen in 2023 and 2025, adding to their emotional burden. The McCanns have learned to navigate this, selectively engaging with credible outlets, while shielding their twins from public vitriol. Recent developments, particularly the June 2025 Algarve searches and Bruckner's potential early release, have tested the family further. The searches, which yielded no significant evidence beyond animal bones and unrelated guns, offered no closure. The prospect of Bruckner's release, facilitated by an anonymous donor paying his fine, as per the Portugal News, has sparked concern, given his status as the prime suspect without DNA evidence linking him to Madleen. The McCanns issued a restrained statement during the searches, expressing support for police efforts, but avoiding speculation, reflecting their cautious approach after years of false leads. Despite these challenges, the McCanns remain hopeful, driven by the possibility that modern forensic tools, like TrueAllele, could revisit the inconclusive 2007 DNA evidence. Their advocacy continues to inspire, keeping Madeleen's case alive while highlighting the plight of missing children worldwide. Their unwavering commitment underscores a belief that the truth, however elusive, is still within reach. The disappearance of Madeleine McCann on May 4, 2007, remains one of the most perplexing unsolved mysteries of our time. As of July 3, 2025, the case stands at an impasse, with no definitive answers despite nearly 2 decades of investigation. The DNA evidence, central to the case, has proven frustratingly inconclusive. Mixed profiles from the McCann's apartment and rental car, analyzed in 2007, failed to pinpoint Madeleen's fate or link prime suspect Christian Bruckner to the crime. Recent searches in June 2025 in the Algarve yielded only animal bones and unrelated guns, underscoring the persistent lack of forensic breakthroughs. Yet, the resilience of Kate and Jerry McCann, alongside tireless investigators, keeps hope alive that the truth may one day emerge. The McCanns' unwavering commitment, through their Find Madleen campaign, has sustained global awareness, raising funds and advocating for missing children worldwide. Their emotional endurance, despite relentless scrutiny and false claims like those of Julia Wandelt in 2023 and 2025, is remarkable. Investigators, spanning British, Portuguese, and German authorities, have poured resources, over £13 million for Operation Grange alone, into pursuing leads, from Bruckner's criminal history to the 2025 searches. However, the absence of conclusive DNA evidence and Bruckner's looming release, in September 2025, potentially expedited by an anonymous donor, highlight the case's ongoing challenges. The potential of modern DNA technology offers a glimmer of hope. Tools like cybergenetics TrueAllele, proposed in 2019 but not yet utilized, could unravel the complex 2007 DNA mixtures, potentially identifying contributors or clarifying Madeleen's presence. Advances like NGS might extract profiles from degraded samples, such as the mysterious saliva trace, offering new leads. International DNA databases, now more robust, could match unknown profiles to missing persons or suspects. Yet, bureaucratic hurdles and jurisdictional complexities have stalled these opportunities, leaving the case in limbo. If authorities act on these advancements, a breakthrough could still be possible. The Madeleine McCann case transcends a single tragedy, prompting reflection on child safety and international cooperation. It underscores the need for better systems to track missing persons, especially in tourist hubs like the Algarve, where transient populations complicate investigations. We urge viewers with any information, however small, to contact authorities or the Find Madleen campaign. Your tip could be the key to closure. The case also calls for stronger global collaboration, as seen in the strained dynamics between British, Portuguese, and German efforts. By learning from these challenges, we can better protect vulnerable children. As we conclude, the hope for answers endures. The McCann's strength, the investigators' persistence, and the public's vigilance keep Madeleen's story alive. Whether through a DNA breakthrough or an unexpected lead, the truth about what happened on that fateful night in Praia da Luz remains within reach. Let's hold on to that hope, honor Madeleen's memory, and continue the search for justice, not just for her, but for all missing children.